Hi everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com and this is Jody Hedlund. Jody is an author, speaker and mother to 5 children. Her debut novel, The Preacher's Bride, was released in October 2010 and her next novel, The Doctor's Lady, will be released in September 2011. Jody also has a great blog where she shares a lot of writing advice. So welcome, Jody.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm so glad to be here.
It's great to have you on the show. So why don't you start by telling us a bit about you and about your writing journey?
Okay. Well, like many writers, I was born with a pen in my hand, and I filled notebooks with stories when I was growing up. And when my college years came, I knew I would need a career to pay the bills, and while I worked on my novels, so I pursued social work. And I really have a heart for the underprivileged, so that was a perfect match for me. And then I just kept on writing during those years when I worked as a social worker. And then I took some time off during my baby days. I had written about 5 books at that point and had started garnering some interest. But I just took the time off to focus on my children. I had 3 children ages 2 and under. And so changing diapers became a full-time job at that point. And I appreciated the time to focus on my family, to mature as a parent, and to grow spiritually. Eventually, though, I felt the nudge to begin writing again. I was particularly fascinated by great women from history, those who were long forgotten by our modern world, women who had been overshadowed by their husbands. So I thought they deserved recognition, and so the first book I wrote after my long hiatus, after taking all that time off, I started writing about 4 years ago, and The Preacher's Bride was the first book I wrote. And in it, I wanted to bring to life the woman Elizabeth Bunyan, who is the wife of the prolific Puritan writer John Bunyan, and he's best known for the classic Pilgrim's Progress. So the book is about how they met and their love affair, and ends up with him. Obviously, they get married and ends up with him going to prison. But it took me about a year to complete because at the time my children were still quite young, and so I did it during nap times and in evenings after they went to bed, and it took me about a year to finish. So that was the first book that I did, and about that same time, I began to familiarize myself with the market, and the writing industry had changed a lot since I had written years before. And so I spent a lot of time immersing myself in the industry and before I began querying my book. So that's a little bit about my journey.
No, that's fantastic. And no, I'm really interested there that you chose John Bunyan as, so that combines the sort of religious idea with the historical idea. So how do you personally do your research for historical novels?
Well, my research is a pretty in-depth process. I usually spend weeks reading biographies and any other time related to the book. And obviously with The Preacher's Bride, there were quite a few biographies and actual books that John Bunyan had written that I read and took the language from, and just really learned a lot about the culture from those books. So mostly what I do is I read all of those books, sort through plot ideas, and try and stick as closely as possible to the facts, but also knowing I need to dramatize to bring the story to life. A large part of my planning also involves getting to know my characters, and I use an extensive character worksheet, which is available on my blog for those who want to take a look at it. I try to use what history tells us about the real characters, but then I also have to fill in the rest and make them larger than life. So once my characters are living and breathing and I have the basic plot outline, I don't stop during first draft mode to research unless I absolutely have to. So I try to do all the research first and then write it, and then during editing I go back and research the little details that I need to fill in. So that's kind of my process for researching, and it's always evolving, but that gives a good idea of what I tend to do for my book.
Great. And you also focus on, I guess, the romance aspect of these relationships. Maybe you could talk a bit about writing romance and any tips for other people wanting to get into that.
Yes, I definitely love the romance aspect of these stories. They're just fascinating. And I really think that in a romance, the love relationship is what has to take a primary, if not central role in the plot. I usually think of my plot as a three-strand braid, where one braid is the external plot, another is the internal for character development, and the third is the relationship plot. So in a romance, that third strand, the relationship plot, is imperative. It needs to be woven together with the other two. Of course, in shorter category romances, authors will probably spend a little less time focusing on the external strand and the internal strand and put more time on that relationship strand. But in my books, which are close to 100,000 words in length, I work really hard not to just have a relationship strand. I try to have a really strong external plot and internal character development. And but as far as a romance, what I would say is essential that I've learned through working with my publisher is you really have to have strong, likable heroes and heroines. Readers of romances want characters that they can fall in love with, and they expect to ooh and ah over your characters. That doesn't mean they have to be perfect, but they do want someone that they just absolutely love by the end of the story. And the second thing I would say that's imperative is that romances have to have a happily ever after. You're working toward getting that by the end of the book. And that is another reader expectation. Mm. And when I first wrote The Preacher's Bride, I left John Bunyan in prison at the end of the book. And that was in my original draft. I was trying to stay true to what happened to him in real life. And my publisher, before we signed the contract, asked me if I would be willing to change that aspect of the story because obviously this is a historical romance and the readers would be disappointed if he ended up in prison away from his wife, Elizabeth. So I agreed to have him somehow get out of prison for a short time at least and be reunited with his wife at the end of the book. So that's just one example of how it's so important to readers. And I've actually had readers who said, oh, I loved your ending. And I think, oh, what if I would have left it the other way? Would I have disappointed them with that ending? So I would say, like I said, a strong, likable heroes and heroines and the happily ever after for romances, for sure.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I'm also interested in the Christian faith angle because, both of your books are focusing on this. And for many people, well, for some people, bringing spirituality in and faith in is difficult. So are your books particularly for a Christian market, or do you write for a wider market and try and bring your faith into that?
Well, at this time, I am with a Christian publisher. Bethany House is a division of Baker Books, and so they have certain expectations of what my books need to contain, and obviously readers who pick up Bethany House books have expectations as well. So um, within Christian fiction or inspirational fiction, as it's also known, there is a wide spectrum of what's accepted. And most of the time there will be a level of spirituality in a book. And obviously, it's a matter of intense debate actually within publishing houses and with different authors as to how much of the faith element is required or authors should put into their books. But I guess I really feel like the varying level is a good thing, because there are readers who want a lot, and then there are some who don't want very much at all. They don't want to be preached at. So to have authors who cover a wide spectrum is a good thing. From a personal standpoint, obviously the Preacher's Bride, like you said, has religious elements in it because of the nature of the setting, time period. John Bunyan was a tinker by trade and a preacher by calling, and he was eventually persecuted and imprisoned. And at that time in history, religion was vitally important to almost everyone. And so I think because of the nature and the setting of my book, readers accept the religious tones that are in it. And I think that even if it weren't set in that time period, I as a writer would try to weave in themes and religious matter so that it doesn't take a reader out of the story, so that they're woven in seamlessly. And to use universal themes that anyone can relate to. For example, discrimination for belief. Obviously, in The Preacher's Bride, he's being discriminated against because of his religious beliefs. That's something a lot of people can relate to, no matter what their faith is. Or marriage crises. They have some marital problems, and a lot of people can relate to that, or low self-esteem, or difficulty prioritizing family. So there are a lot of themes that you can weave through and not necessarily preach at your audience. And so that's really my goal when I write, is not to be sermonizing through my stories, but to really convey messages and themes that anyone of any faith could relate to. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I'm also interested in the fact that, you have a Christian agent, you have a Christian publisher, you're writing books that are, Christian, but could also be romance, historical romance. As your own personal author brand, do you feel that has put you in a box in any way? Like, could you write, something that was outside the Christian genre with your own name, or would that affect your branding in some way, do you think?
Well, my agent and I have had discussions about branching out, and it's definitely a possibility. I have written a book that might not be completely appropriate for the Christian market, and while I love working with my publisher. They're a wonderful, top-notch publishing company. So I don't in any way want to move away from them. But I do think that there is room in my career for moving beyond just strictly Christian works at some point. It's something my agent and I have really been talking about a lot lately. So yes, I would love to do more of the inspired by, based on real people, without having to change so much of what happened. And right now there's not really a market for that with Christian publishers, whereas there might be in a more secular publisher. So it's definitely something. I don't think that it would require me to change my name or my brand. I think I could build on what I've already accomplished, and the two could really go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I'm always interested in how people end up in, niches and whether they can escape, because we all want to write different things, don't we?
We sure do. Yeah. I mean, there's just, I think all of us, especially with the changing climate in publishing, need to be open to our careers taking different paths at different points, or even parallel paths. Maybe it won't be a completely different one. Maybe we'll have a couple of different paths going at the same time. And I think the key is being flexible and open at this point to wherever that might lead, and not getting set in a certain route.
Mm. No, let's follow up on that, because you recently wrote a post on your blog about, reasons that having an agent is great, at the moment, and you obviously love your publisher. Maybe you could comment on the change, how the industry changing is affecting you, and why you think it's still good to be with a traditional publisher and an agent.
Well, I do have a really great literary agent. Rochelle Gardner is my agent. And I actually happened upon her during a time when, after I started querying The Preacher's Bride, she was fairly new at agenting at the time, and so she accepted my full of my manuscript, and it ended up sitting in her slush pile for a long time. And during that time, I wrote another book, and I started entering contests. And it was through a contest final, actually, that I was able to contact her and let her know that I finaled in the contest and see if she was still interested in my manuscript. Well, she offered me representation like 2 days after that. So that's how I ended up with Rochelle. And she was able to sell, after she read both of my books, she was able to sell one of them to Bethany House and get a 3-book contract. So it was the first one with The Preacher's Bride, and then 2 to be determined after that. And so that second book that hasn't sold is the one that we're still not sure what to do with. That may we're just kind of trying to figure out where to go with that. But I guess that having an agent has helped me enormously move forward in my career. Obviously, to get into a traditional publisher, an agent is still going to give you the best in with a publisher. But beyond that, I think my agent, and any agent for that matter, if it's a good one, can help give career direction. They have the inside scoop with what's going on, can give you an advantage with their connections, and she's constantly talking with various publishers and industry professionals, and so has an inside scoop of what's going on, and can work for her authors in a way that I just wouldn't be able to do on my own. So I really do think there's still a big advantage to having an agent, particularly for going traditional publishing. And even Rochelle even has some clients who have e-published and are doing very well, and she's working with those authors on securing, just different deals for them. So I think even no matter what publishing route you choose, an agent can work to your advantage. For more information, I would say check out my blog post from earlier in the week, because I did list quite a few things that my agent has done for me in that post, and she's been fantastic.
Great, and but let's talk about your blog as well, because you write some really good blog posts. I consistently tweet you, as you know, and we've met on Twitter, and you haven't been writing it for too long though, have you? What made you start the blog, and what do you get out of it as a writer with a publisher?
Well, my blog, I started blogging about two and a half years ago. And at the time, was immersing myself in the industry and really learning a lot. And everyone said, you have to have a blog to build a platform, which I think has really been true for me. My blog has really helped spread a lot of buzz about my book, and I honestly do think it has helped my book hit the bestseller list too. My book has been on the CBA, the Christian Book Bestseller List, twice now, and I really do think that my blogging platform and my online presence has helped with that. I mean, there are a lot of other factors too, but I do firmly believe that an online presence is critical in today's market. There are just so many books out there for authors to be able to stand out among all the many others. Having a blog is one way that you can begin to do that. But my blog has helped me make key connections and friendships and a team of supporters who are some of my closest writing friends. In fact, I met my critique partners through blogging, and those deep relationships are so important for writers to have the support and encouragement from one another. And then consistent blogging has definitely helped me meet new people and broaden my presence. And so I think that it's not an overnight thing. I mean, it takes time, consistency, persistence, self-discipline, and writing my posts has also helped me stay on top of what's going on in the industry. Since I want to continue to be relevant to my readers, I need to read top industry blogs, and it helps me be savvy with my own writing career as well. So I think there's been a whole lot of benefits to blogging. I think the key that I hear most writers when they're trying to decide whether to blog is, what do I write about on my blog on a consistent basis? What do people want to hear? So I think the key is finding your niche and finding out what you can add to the blogosphere that's unique and you. Just like we have to figure out with our books what's unique, what's us, and how we can add something different that's already out there. I think we need to do the same with our blogging. And once we can do that and meet readers' needs, people will continue to come back. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but blogging really has been a wonderful experience for me. I know it's not for everybody, but it definitely has been something fun that I've enjoyed.
Yes, and for me too. And I love my blog and my podcast, and I meet people like you, and it's just a fantastic way to get out there. And there is a kind of currency, isn't there, as well? And we are aware of each other's blogs. There's a group of us online, and I think it becomes, you have to get in there somehow. And if you're a writer without a blog, it's actually quite hard to get into the group, isn't it?
It is. It's so much easier if you can join in the community and not sit on the sidelines. And when you get in the community, you can begin to build those friendships and those connections, and the team surrounds you of people who mutually support and build each other up and promote each other. And that's huge, because the snowball effect from that, if you have 50 people that who are on your team, however you want to define that, those 50 people have their followers, and those, it just ripples out. The effects are just incredible once you can get in and get connected to those people.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I urge everybody, if you haven't started blogging, give it a go. And like we've both said, it takes some time, but it's so rewarding. It is. Okay, so we're pretty much out of time. So tell people where they can find you and find your books.
Well, like you said, I have a blog, and you're welcome to swing by and check out my past articles. The easiest way to get to my blog is through my website. It's jodyhedlund.com. And once you're on my website, you can connect with me on Twitter, Facebook, my blog, and you can find information about my book. And The Doctor's Ladies, my next book, is releasing in September, and it's another inspired by, based on the life of a true person. So I won't say more than that. People will have to read it to find out who. But yeah, come to my website and look around, and if you have a chance, say hi. I love meeting new people and connecting with people and actually getting to put names to faces. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, thanks ever so much for your time, Jody. That was great.
Thank you, Joanna, very much for having me.